Ever feel like you're on this, like, relentless treadmill of life, chasing happiness but never quite, catching it?
It's a common dilemma,
We're diving into the wisdom of Sadhguru for this deep dive. He's a yogi.
which basically means,
It means he's dedicated to exploring, like, the depths of human consciousness
yeah,
through practices like meditation and stuff.
makes sense. And he's also considered a mystic,
Right.
someone who's seeking those profound experiences that go beyond, like, our ordinary perception.
Exactly. And you've been digging into his teachings. What are some of the core insights we can expect to uncover?
Well, you brought a really interesting mix of sources. We've got talks, interviews, and they all seem to point to this idea that there's a different kind of happiness available to us, a joy that comes from within, rather
Yeah.
than, chasing external validation.
Okay, I'm intrigued. And it all seems to stem from his own, shall we say, colorful transformation story.
Right. Talk about a wild ride.
We're talking successful businessman riding his motorcycle through India, the whole 9 yards.
Living the dream, or so he thought.
Then one day, he goes up a hill, has this crazy experience, and comes down a changed man.
It's a classic example of what many call a spiritual awakening. He talks about being flooded with ecstasy, which, intense. But what I find most fascinating is how he describes losing all track of time, spending days in meditation without even realizing it.
Wait, what?
Days.
Days. He claims he meditated for 13 days straight at one point.
Okay, that's next level. Most of
Yeah.
us can barely sit still for 13 minutes.
Right. It speaks to the power of these altered states of consciousness that many traditions explore. Like, he really tapped into something there. It's like those moments when you get so engrossed in something you love, and hours just disappear, except magnified by 1,000.
Totally. But most of us aren't going to meditate for 13 days straight. So how do we tap into that stillness, that presence, in a way that actually fits into our, everyday lives?
Right, because I should go to work on Monday.
Exactly. And that's where his teachings about the nature of joy and misery come in.
Okay, let's hear it.
He doesn't sugarcoat it. He says we're, and I quote, addicted to our own misery, clinging to negativity, looking for fulfillment in all the wrong places.
He actually calls the concept of heaven a crime, which, I don't know, seems a bit extreme, right?
It's definitely a bold statement, but his reasoning is actually quite interesting. Boils down to our obsession with the future. If we believe that true happiness lies in some, distant heaven, we completely devalue the present moment. We become so focused on getting somewhere else that we miss the joy that already exists within us.
Oh, I see where he's going with this. It's like we're constantly searching for the next dopamine hit, whether it's a promotion, a relationship, even that second glass of wine.
Exactly. And Sadhguru would argue that true liberation comes from breaking free from this external dependence, from realizing that lasting joy isn't found in things outside of ourselves, but in cultivating a certain inner state.
Which brings us to this whole stoned on your own bliss thing he talks about.
Oh, yes.
I have to admit, initially that threw me off a bit.
It's definitely a provocative way to put it.
Yeah.
But he's essentially talking about our body's natural ability to experience bliss. You know how some people use cannabis to feel a sense of euphoria?
Sure.
Sadhguru claims certain practices, like meditation, can amplify those same blissful feelings by naturally boosting our endocannabinoid levels.
Hold on, endocannabinoids. Break that down for me.
Basically, think of them as your body's built-in bliss molecules.
Bliss molecules. I like the sound of that.
Right. They regulate things like mood, pleasure, and even pain perception.
Interesting.
And what's fascinating is that research on mindfulness and meditation actually suggests that these practices can increase the production of these feel-good chemicals.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's like tapping into your own internal pharmacy.
Okay, that makes sense. But it still begs the question, if this natural bliss is available to us, why are we all so, well, miserable?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, if this potential for bliss is already within us, why are so many of us, struggling to find it?
So what's the answer? Or at least what's Sadhguru's take on it?
Well, he'd probably say it's because we've become so disconnected from our true nature. We're constantly bombarded with messages telling us we need more, more, more to be happy. But he suggests it's actually the opposite. It's about stripping away those layers of, conditioning and rediscovering the joy that's already within us.
It's like we're searching for something outside of ourselves, when the real treasure was buried within all along.
Exactly. And, this actually ties into another intriguing point he makes, that constantly chasing peace. It can actually hold us back from experiencing true joy.
Wait, really? That seems kind of counterintuitive, doesn't it? I mean, isn't peace the ultimate goal? How could seeking peace be a bad thing?
He's not saying peace is bad, but rather that it should be a byproduct of a life lived in alignment with our true nature, not the end goal in itself.
Okay, I think I see where you're going with this.
When we become fixated on achieving peace, right, we might start avoiding anything that could disrupt that sense of calmness, even experiences that could bring us, immense joy.
So it's about embracing the full spectrum of life, the highs and the lows, the messiness and the beauty of it all.
Precisely. Sadhguru believes that true inner peace, the kind that isn't easily shaken, it arises when we stop resisting the natural ebb and flow of life,
Mm.
and instead learn to, ride the waves with a sense of awareness and acceptance.
Which I'm guessing ties into his whole thing about our interconnectedness with, well, everything. Like, he even extends this idea to our relationship with the planet, right? Which honestly makes you think about things from a whole new perspective.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sadhguru doesn't shy away from addressing the environmental crisis head on. He's got some, let's just say, pretty sobering statistics about the decline of biodiversity in the state of our planet. But he always seems to connect it back to the same idea of separation,
Oh.
Like we've created this artificial divide between ourselves and nature, and it's wreaking havoc on both.
It's like we've forgotten that we're part of this intricate web of life. We're not separate from nature. We are nature.
Exactly. And he argues that this disconnect, right, this illusion of separateness, it's at the root of so many of our problems. The way we treat the planet, the way we treat each other, it all stems from that same source.
Which, I mean, it makes his message all the more urgent. It's not just about personal transformation anymore. It's about recognizing our responsibility to the planet, to each other, to everything.
And he doesn't stop there. Sadhguru also delves into some, let's just say, seriously complex issues, like we're talking democracy, technology, even the dark side of the internet. He's not afraid to tackle the tough stuff, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, I was actually really struck by his take on technology. It's not that he's anti-technology, right? But he's acutely aware of its potential downsides, especially in our hyper-connected world. I mean, he points to some pretty startling statistics, like the prevalence of pornography online, the horrifying reality of child trafficking on the internet. It's heavy stuff.
It's a stark reminder of the double-edged sword of technology, It has the power to connect us, educate us, empower us. But it also has this dark underbelly that we can't afford to ignore.
And he doesn't let us off the hook either. He challenges us to really examine our own relationship with technology. Like, how often are we mindlessly scrolling, numbing ourselves with distractions, or even contributing to the very problems that, we're worried about?
He argues that we need to become more conscious users of technology. Instead of letting it control us, we need to harness its power for good. Use it to spread awareness, connect with like-minded individuals, create positive change. It's all possible if we're just mindful about it.
It's about reclaiming our agency, right? Remembering that we have a choice in how we engage with these tools, that they don't control us, we control them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that we have a responsibility, I think, to use our voices and our platforms to speak out against injustice and work towards a more equitable and sustainable future.
It's a powerful reminder that our online actions have real-world consequences, that it's not just some game.
It's not a game at all. And you know what else I thought was interesting? How he challenges our perception of, history and wisdom. We often romanticize the past, assuming that people who lived thousands of years ago were somehow wiser or more enlightened than we are.
Right. Like, oh, they were so much more in tune with nature and all that.
Exactly. But Sadhguru asks this, really simple yet profound question. He's like, who told you that?
It's like he's shaking us out of our complacency, urging us to question our assumptions and think for ourselves, which, honestly, we could all use a little more of these days.
Absolutely. And you know what I really respect about him? He backs up his words with action. He's not just preaching from a mountaintop. He's actively engaged in creating positive change through his organization, his environmental activism, his, tireless efforts to raise global consciousness.
He seems to really embody this idea of, walking the talk, which is incredibly inspiring, honestly. More people should be like that.
I totally agree. And he also emphasizes the importance of, not taking ourselves too seriously. He often injects humor into his talks, reminding us that life is short and that, well, we're all going to be dust in the wind eventually.
It's a good reminder to lighten up, I think, to embrace the absurdity of it all and not get too caught up in the, drama of our own lives.
And to remember that joy is our birthright. It's not something we have to earn or achieve. It's already within us, waiting to be, unleashed.
Which in a way kind of brings us back to that motorcycle, to that sense of freedom and adventure that seemed to spark his whole journey. It's almost like a metaphor for the spiritual journey itself, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's about embracing the unknown, pushing beyond our comfort zones, approaching life with a sense of curiosity and wonder.
And maybe even a little bit of that like childlike playfulness that Sadhguru seems to embody so effortlessly. So, where do we even begin? How do we cultivate that sense of playfulness, that inner freedom, especially, in the midst of our busy, often chaotic lives? It can't all be motorcycle rides and, mountaintop meditations, right?
Right. And that's where I think Sadhguru's teachings about the integration of like being and doing come in. He often uses this analogy of, well-tuned BMW.
A BMW, like the car.
Exactly. But in this case, it stands for body, mind, and world. All three need to be in harmony for us to, truly thrive.
Okay, that makes sense. But he's also pretty clear that for most of us, it's the M, the mind, that's causing the most trouble. Am I right?
Oh, absolutely. He doesn't mince words, does he? He compares our minds to like these incredibly powerful computers capable of amazing things. But if we don't know how to use them, they just become sources of, distraction and suffering. We get caught in these loops of overthinking, anxiety, negativity. It can be tough to break free.
So then, how do we become the programmers of our own minds? He talks a lot about meditation, but I always get the sense he means something much deeper than what I think most of us probably imagine.
You're definitely picking up on something there. He often points out that the English word meditation, it's a bit clumsy. It lacks the nuance of the, various terms used in like Eastern traditions. It's not just about sitting still with your eyes closed. It's about cultivating a deep awareness of your inner world,
Yeah.
learning to like direct your attention
Yeah.
instead of being controlled by it.
It's almost like we're like creating space
Yeah.
between the observer and the observed, between our like true selves and the constant chatter of our thoughts and emotions.
Yes, exactly. And within that space,
Hmm.
that stillness, we can start to access like a different dimension of being.
Yeah.
We can connect with that inner joy that's like always been there.
Yeah.
But it's often buried beneath these layers of, mental noise and conditioning.
It's amazing, though, how he connects this inner work, this like mental stuff, to our relationship with our bodies and even the physical world around us. He even talks about how our own bodies can become a source of suffering if we cling too tightly to them, which is kind of a mind-blowing concept when you really think about it.
It goes back to that illusion of separation.
Right.
Like we get so caught up in identifying with our physical forms, our appearance, our, aches and pains, our desires, that we forget we're part of something much larger. We lose sight of that interconnectedness with, all of life.
Which I think brings us back full circle to his passion for environmental activism, to like bridging the gap between humanity and the natural world. That's not just about our inner world, it's about how we interact with the world outside of us, too.
For Sadhguru, it's all connected. He sees environmental destruction as like a symptom of a deeper spiritual crisis, a crisis of consciousness. He's calling for a radical shift in how we see ourselves in relation to the planet, to each other. It's a big ask.
It is a big ask. But I do think he seems to genuinely believe that we have the capacity for this kind of transformation, that we're not doomed.
And he's not just leaving it up to, fate or whatever. He's actively working to inspire and empower individuals to actually step into their own potential as like agents of change.
Yeah.
He reminds us that we have the technology, the resources, and most importantly, I think, the human capacity for love, compassion, creativity to really turn things around.
It's a powerful message. Honestly, it's a lot to take in. Even just like thinking about all the stuff we've talked about today, from like the nature of joy and suffering to the importance of, environmental stewardship to the responsible use of technology, it can feel a little overwhelming, to be honest.
It's a lot. But it doesn't have to be overwhelming. That's the thing. Sadhguru's message isn't about like adding more to our already full plates. It's about simplifying, about stripping away the unnecessary and rediscovering the profound joy and freedom that come from aligning ourselves with our true nature.
It's about remembering that we have a choice in every single moment, a choice to engage with life consciously, to act with compassion, to create a future that actually reflects our like highest values.
And you know what? Maybe, just maybe, we can all learn to tap into a little bit of that, that Sadhguru-esque joy and wisdom along the way.
I like that thought. And on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive into the wisdom of Sadhguru. We've covered a lot of ground today, and we hope you found it as insightful and thought-provoking as we have.